have Sarah Schaefer. She's our web designer and developer.
Hi, everyone.
And she is going to take us through the Nature's Notebook Observation Deck refresher and sneak peek. So before we get started, I want to just do a quick orientation to GoToMeeting. So if you're out there and you can see the chat box, if you want to go ahead and type in what state you're from so we can see where everyone's dialing in from. Okay. Sarah, do you want to tell us where people are?
We've got Minnesota, California, Colorado, Massachusetts. Anybody else want to chime in? New York, another California, Ohio, New York again, Georgia, New York, Florida, DC, Washington, Arizona, Illinois, Virginia, Connecticut, New York again, Wyoming and Arizona, Pennsylvania, New York, Washington. Nice, showing you guys all over.
Well represented. Some places it's probably spring and other places it's not. So this is a good time to be going through a refresher on how to use your Nature's Notebook observation deck. So also before we get started, I want to say that sometimes the internet speeds might create a lag on your computer, so you may or may not see the slide change exactly when we change it. But we found that usually if you're patient and wait a couple seconds, it'll show up. We are going to record the webinar, so if you miss anything or your internet connection seems to be failing you, then you can always, we'll send out the link and go back and see what was on there and what you missed. And if you are working with volunteers or other people, other audiences, you're welcome to share this with folks later as a way to get them oriented to Nature's Notebook and making observations. And if you have a question, you can go ahead and type it into the question box that you see on the GoToWebinar, and I will try to answer them as we go along if it's something that has to do with the working of the GoToMeeting. But if it is something that we could share with everybody, we'll hold the questions until the end, and then we'll go over those. We always type up the questions and send them around and post them on the website afterwards as well. So if there's something you missed you want to go back and see, we'll have those available to you at that time. So I think with that, we can get started. Okay. The first thing we want to do is just give you a quick overview of Nature's Notebook in case you haven't really participated in phenology monitoring with our program. And let's see if I can make the slides go. Advancing over there.
Nobody see your mouse moving. Try the mouse.
Let's see. There we go. Okay, so first I want to also introduce you to all of our team that we have here. So Sarah and I are with you today, and we also have Patty Gerton, who's part of our outreach team. She's our botanist. Teresa Crimmins is our partnerships and outreach coordinator, and you probably received some emails from her, and maybe Erin Postumus, our outreach associate and Fish and Wildlife Service liaison. And then we have Alyssa Rose Martin, our assistant director. So all of these folks are pretty integral in putting together our webinar series. So thanks to our team for getting that going. Before we begin, I just want to make sure that everybody understands what phenology is. And phenology is basically the science of the seasons. So when you think about what you see happening outside in the springtime, things like the trees beginning to leaf out, flowers getting buds, birds migrating in the fall and in the springtime, all of those things are very observable activities that you'll see outside. They have to do with the life cycle events of plants and animals, and we call those things phenophases, and then their relationship and timing to environmental conditions. So all of those things are cued in nature to happen at a certain time when the temperature is just right, when the moisture content is just right, or when the day length is just right. And those are the things that we are interested in studying because they can really tell us how plants and animals are responding, especially if you're thinking about long-term understanding of climate change. It's really important. And our USA National Phenology Network is an organization that started in 2007 with a goal to create a standardized data set for using these phenology observations in research. Many people were studying these things at a continental scale, and there were varying ways that that information has been collected over the centuries. So having a standardized way for folks to understand what they're looking at and how these things are responding to seasonal and long-term changes is really important. We wanted to make sure that that data was available to anyone who is interested in doing the research, and also citizens in their backyards or at their local organizations they might participate in, such as a park or a wildlife refuge. So people can capture these observations, enter them into our national phenology database, and then that information is available to anyone that's interested in understanding how those things are changing through time. Secondarily, we also like to encourage people of all ages and backgrounds to participate in phenology observations. And as an environmental educator, I think phenology observation is really a key piece to understanding the natural world. And it's a great way to teach a lot of things, a lot of topics from environmental science and ecology, English, social studies, cultural studies, ethnobotany. All of those things are really tied to phenology. The way that we capture our observations, both scientists and citizen scientists can enter them into our interface on our website, which is called Nature's Notebook. And the website is down there below if you haven't seen it before. And it's basically a place where everyone can keep track of their information and also take their information back out so they can see exactly what is happening in their space through time. Right now we have about 4,500 active observers using Nature's Notebook, and they're participating in about 7,000 sites across the U.S. We just recently released another suite of species for this spring, so now we have over 1,000 species that you can observe. Many of those species were in the database from 2009, so we're starting to build that long-term data set that researchers are really interested in. We've got about 4.6 million records, and we also have some data sets in there, like our lilac data set that has been around for some time, so since 1956. And that is really important for understanding the timing of spring. If you saw our first webinar this season called Springcasting, we have a number of researchers, Toby Alt, and a few other people that are working on information using that data set, and we're hoping to continue to gather information for that in the future. Sometimes people ask us, well, how do I get my favorite species in there? But we really try to focus on a small number of species that are interesting to either local or regional researchers or people that are doing research at the continental scale. And the way that we do that, this is our example of a database or our data sheet. And we like to make sure that people are capturing information when they see it. And if they're not seeing something, we think that that's equally as valuable, because then folks that are using the phenology observations for research can have a better understanding of exactly when that phenophase is occurring. We usually ask folks to go outside and make observations at least once a week, so that you can capture the first time that a phenophase is occurring. And that's really important during the growing season or when something is happening. So as spring is starting to gear up across the country, that's when we really want people to make sure they're going out at least once a week to capture those observations. We also have a way to capture if you're not sure what you're looking at. And educationally, that's a great way to just make sure you go back and see if you're really sure what you're seeing, really understanding what the phenophases are, so that the next time you go out, you can see if that thing is the same or if it's different. And the major phenophases that we capture on the plant are the leaves, the flowers, and the fruits. And that you can see broken down there on the data sheet. The data sheet will look just like your interface on Nature's Notebook, and we'll show you that in a couple minutes. And the animal observations that we are able to capture are the same as well. So this is an example of the common loon and what one of our data sheets would look like for that. And for animal phenophases, the major things that we record are the activity, the reproduction, and the method. And method just means how are they interacting with the feeding station. Are they eating insects, or maybe they're eating food at a feeder? And that just really gives us a great picture of what's happening in the habitat. Once we have all this information captured in Nature's Notebook, we have ways of outputting the data that really gives you a sense of the duration of the season and how some of these phenophases are overlapping with each other. And in this slide, you can see that the leaves, the flowers, and the fruits might happen at the same time on this deciduous tree. And you can also see that you can include animal phenophases as well, so that you know when certain animals in the habitat are interested in using it. And that's what makes Nature's Notebook a little bit different than some of the other phenology observation programs, because it gives you a sense of what's happening at the habitat level rather than just the observation on the individual plant or animal itself. And the last thing I want to mention before I turn it over to Sarah is we have a lot of information on our website, on the NPN website, that details the types of research that are being done with our phenology observations. So we really want to make sure that people know that their information that they're entering in the database, whether you're observing alone or with a group of people, is very important to researchers. You can participate in a number of campaigns that we have, or you can just observe things in your backyard. But all of the data that we get and gather is very important to research. And you can read about how some of those data are being used on our website that I have there that we call the vignettes page. We also have another space on the website where we've highlighted some of the publications that have used our data in research. And we can continue to add stuff as people do more research and there are more publications that are available. So with that, I think I gave you a quick overview. Again, we have plenty of information on our website, but I think I will go ahead and turn it over to Sarah so that she can show us how, once you make these observations in nature, do you possibly get them into the Nature's Notebook program.
Hi, everyone. So let me get out of here 1 second. And we're going to head over to the website. You should be familiar with this already. Hold on, bear with me while my computer is loading. So, you're at the Nature's Notebook homepage. Hopefully, you've seen our new animal tracking. It shows we're 10% of our goal to 1.5 million records this year. So hopefully you can help us with that. We're going to log in. You've got your username and your password. And it logged you in successfully. So now go over to your observation deck. And we've added a new feature. If you haven't yet been to your observation deck this season, you're going to get a screen that looks like this. And it might take a second to load. Then if you have data in your account already, you'll see this new feature. This is our phenophase calendar. I'll come back to this a little bit later, so just hold off on that. So if you scroll further down, you can see your sites that you have set up. To start, we're going to add a new site right here, and it's going to load a map. You can either find your location on the map by scrolling around, zooming in or out, or if you know the direct address, you could type that in as well. So we're going to add one where I know the address. And it's going to be here in Tucson. Takes a second to load. Okay, there it is. It found us. So if you scroll down here to the bottom, we have some supplemental information. You can fill this out when you set up your site, or if you don't know it at the time, you can always come back, edit your site, and enter it later. We have the overview describing the site. There's a tab for plants, the type of plants you see in the area, the slope that you're on, if any, and then some about animals, if you see domestic animals or such. There's feeders, nest boxes, and there's also a little comment box. If there's any additional information you'd like to provide, save it here. Then at the bottom, create site. It saved it. Scroll back down. See, there it is right there. So next we're going to go into adding some plants. So click this link, add or edit plants. Hopefully you've looked over at the plant list and you know what you want to observe. So I'm going to add the mesquite that's in our lot. You can start typing the common name or the scientific name, and you'll get some options from the drop-down. Okay, so there's 2 types of mesquite, 3 types of mesquite, and I know it's a velvet mesquite. It will then automatically populate a nickname, which you can change. This can be unique for each of the species you add. Then we ask some more information, patch shade status, which this one's in full sun, wild, and there's all the, if it's watered, fertilized, and the gender. There's also planting dates if it's an item you planted yourself and know that information for. You can also add comments, again, any additional information you want to include. If you need clarification on any of the things, these little question marks will pop up and give you more information, as sometimes a definition, to help clarify what we're really asking. So I've entered the information. I'm going to save this plant. And there we go. If you need to add another plant, click this Add a Plant, New Plant. It will refresh the list. Then you can start typing again. There it is. And you can always leave the nickname as it automatically loads. You don't have to change it. That's only if you want to. That one's mostly in the shade. I don't know if it's wild or not, so I'm just going to leave unknown. I know it's not watered. I know it's not fertilized, and I don't know its gender, so I'm going to save that as well. If you ever need to look for the plants that we have available, you can always click this link here. That'll bring you back to our plants list. So if you're done with your plants, that's all we're going to add for now. So let's go back to our observation deck, and let's go into adding some animals. So you're going to click this link, and it's going to bring you to our animal checklist. You can sort by state. There's a lot of options. Or species group if you're only interested in some, you want to find one specific bird. Or partner organizations. There's a couple of them listed here with species that they focus on mainly. Or you have the whole list here. So let's go and filter by state so I don't have to look through everything. And we're going to add mourning doves because we have a lot of those. So scroll down. There we go. So highlight it. It's going to bold it in the list. You're then going to say add to checklist, and it'll move it to the other side. That's going to be on your checklist. Then let's say you accidentally clicked something and you go add all. Oops, you didn't want to do that. So then you can just go remove all from checklist and start back. So let's then add back okay. Let's see. We have some hummingbirds here, so let's add. And we've got some white-winged doves. And I know that we have some deer mouse right outside. So you can always come back at any time and add more or remove animals if you feel you need to. I'm going to save the checklist, which is important. That links it to your account. So now we're going to go back to the observation deck, and everything appears. So let's say we want to change the order. I want to put my Texas barometer bush first because that's the first one I see on the way that I walk. So you're going to go sort plants and animals. This, then you can move everything around. So let's put the Texas barometer first, and let's move the deer mouse up to be the first of the animals. Then submit. Brings you back to your observation deck, and they're in the correct order. So now you're ready. You want to go head outside. You can hit to view the species profiles if you're interested in seeing. So here's the one on the mesquite tree. It will load in a separate window. This has all the information we're asking about. What does it look like? Where can it be found? As well as information on all the phenophases we ask. So let's go back. You can do that for each of the species. Just select which one you want, and it will load them in the organism window, in the organism tab, and you can print their data sheets from here or their phenophase definition sheets. If you want to print the whole packet of all your species, click the Print Field Data Sheets link. Then you can select what things you want to print. We have cover sheets, animal checklist, which is where you'll document which animals you see on what dates. We have the option of a day-by-day data sheet, which prints all of your species, but only one day worth of observations, and it looks something like this. Or we have the species by species, which is several dates on one page for one species. So it's really personal, whichever way you want to do it, whichever way is easiest for you. So, and then the phenophase definition sheet. And then you print Create Data Sheets. It will save and download a PDF file to your computer. See, there it goes. It's downloading my data sheet. So while that's downloading in the background, you can print that file, take that into the field with you, circle your observations, and then when you're done, you can return home to your computer to enter in the observations. Now you can enter in observations in a bulk batch if you don't want to enter them in every time you take observations. They can be backdated. So if you want to save your observations for a month or so and then enter them in once in a while, you're more than welcome to do that. So you're going to go over here to enter observation data in this last column. Click that. It's going to direct you to a new window. So all my things on here correspond to what you see on the data sheet. So I'm opening a data sheet, my data sheet packet, so you guys can see that everything corresponds. Okay, well that's a little slow, so we'll come back to it. Sometimes the website does take a little bit of patience because it's communicating back and forth with a lot of information, so there does have some loading time. So this is information on your contribution of time, as well as your observation method for animals, and if there's snow. So first thing, you click the date, and let's say I went out this weekend, so on the 14th, you can enter the time if you feel necessary by clicking this little clock next to the calendar once you've entered the date. I went at about 1. So then my contribution of time. Again, this information does not have to be entered if you don't feel comfortable entering it, but I'm going to do it because I know my time as well as I'd like to contribute that. So I spent about 20 minutes, and then you got to choose the units. Time spent in travel was about 5 minutes. My animal observation method, and if you roll over the green text, it will give you a little bit of a definition again to help clarify. So it says the time spent observing for animals, and there's no need to report time for incidental sightings. So I just happened to see the animal. So there's animal survey method with, you have 3 options, which are listed on your data sheet as well. So it was incidental that I happened to see the animal. So then report on snow. I'm here in Tucson, Arizona, so we don't get snow. You can close these windows back up if you don't like them expanded, but your information is still there. So then for the plants and animals, you can open all of your windows, or again, click the little arrow to bring them up or close them down. So you'll see here that it has loaded the date as well as the time if you've entered it. So when I went out there, the Texas barometer bush, if you, again, need clarification, hold your mouse over the box and it will give you the phenophase definition and help you clarify. You have the yes, no, or the unsure answers, as well as this column gives you an intensity value. The intensity measures we do not need to have filled out. We do ask that you fill them out if you feel comfortable and confident in doing so. There's no reason that you need to have them filled out if you don't feel comfortable doing so. So if you would like to start, you'll have your hard copy data sheet with your circled answers. So now you're going to just fill in the corresponding yes, no's, and uncertainties. So when I went out to the Texas barometer bush, there were no breaking leaf buds, but there were already young leaves. So there's a no for breaking leaf buds, a yes. There were no flowers, so there were no open flowers, no fruits, no ripe fruits, and no recent fruit or seed. Yes, there was fruit from last season, but you do not include that. So there's also a space for comments. Say if you saw an animal interaction occurring at this plant species, you could enter that here, or you could enter things such as plant looks in poor health, or any information you note. Then the mesquite, again, you'll notice there's a different set of phenophases, but again, the same leaves, flowers, and fruit. So there were young leaves, there were leaves, full-size leaves, there were flowers, and there were open flowers. But I didn't see any pollen yet, no fruits, no ripe fruits, and no seed drop. Again, there are intensity values that you could fill in if you feel comfortable, but I'm not necessarily comfortable, so I'm just going to leave it. So for the deer mouse, I did happen to see one. So this intensity measure I will fill in. It was not feeding, it was not young, and it was not dead. You could enter in comments. Such as that. And here's a handy thing. I didn't see any hummingbirds. So if you'd like to report on that, we have this circle all no that automatically clicks all no answers. So that can speed up your entry time if you need it. Also, here I did see a white-winged dove. So I'm going to say there are a lot of phenophases here. If I don't want to have to sit and click through every no, I can go circle all no, but then only click one yes because I saw one bird. So that can help you enter data for some of the longer phenophase questions. So those were all my entries for that day. I can click Submit Observations, and it tells you here in green text, all observations successfully saved. So, and then you'll see here in the blue box, the date is grayed out, so it has successfully submitted. Then you can enter other days, or even scroll back in time. Say January 12th, 2013 I went out, you could enter it now. Then we also have a nice feature if you're entering bulk data, such as several dates at once, fill in each of the 3 columns with the dates and their subsequent observations, and then enter more data. It will ask you if you want to submit the current data that you listed or not. If you click yes, then it will bring you 2 new windows, so you can submit 2 more dates at once. You can repeat that for as many times as you need to get all your observations entered, such as if you've saved your observations from a month or 2 back. So, since we've gone through entering observations, we're going to go back to our observation deck. And I'm going to show you how to download your observations. So you see this download my data link with a number after it. That's the number of records I have entered on my account. So if you click download my data, and again, it does take a little time because it is going all the way to our servers to communicate with a server, pick up your information, and bring it back. So it downloads in an Excel file. This can then be opened in Excel, and you can manipulate it and view things as you see fit. The observation ID number, the date, the time, the plant, and you might have to expand them pretty wide, depending on how long your names are. The phenophase answer, the status, the abundance, and again, if you don't answer, it will say null. So that's what these 2 columns are showing. Then the category, as well as the phenophase name, and then the scientific name, your common name, the latitude of the location it was observed at, longitude, the site name, and then these last, the elevation value, and then the network, obviously being USA and PN. So you can scroll through here and see all the information. If you wanted to check that your observations got on a certain date got entered, just find them in the date column, see if my observations from the 31st, oh, okay, look, yeah, here they are. So here's the ones from the 31st, they did get submitted. So you're welcome to use this data how you see fit. Another way to check if you're interested in seeing that your observations did get submitted, or that your observation, if you submitted them on a mobile app and you want to check that you got them submitted, I'm going to go to my backyard site and go to the enter observation data. Since I submitted some of this on my phone, I want to double check that it got in. So I'm going to scroll back in time. Using these blue arrows, I can jump back. You can specify how many columns you want to jump back. You can go 1 at a time or 3 at a time. So let's see. I'm going to go back a couple rows. And you can see it loads all your past data. You can see at the top the date, as well as scrolling down to see your phenophase selection. Okay, so it looks like my observations are there. So let's go back to the observation deck. And I'm going to show you guys how to join a partner group. We have several groups that have already established trails and marked plants and animals available for the public to join and contribute their observations as well to an already established effort. So you're going to scroll down about halfway to this My Account details. Click the link. Click Edit. This can also be done during initial profile setup if you're a new Nature's Notebook user. Otherwise, you're going to scroll down here and find your partner group. So there are quite a long list. And they're broken down if you are part of a school or a national park, or if you know it's at a nature center. So we have some here in Tucson, the Tucson Phenology Trail. So if it's got a plus next to it, you're going to click the plus to expand all the group sites. There's the Tucson Audubon, the Sam Hughes, and the Rincon Neighborhood Trail that are all right next to where I have access to, and I observe at their site. So I select those boxes, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and click Save. It will then give me access to their already established sites back in my observation deck. So go back to your Nature's Notebook home, go to your observation deck, and now your observation deck is going to look a little different. When you scroll down, your group sites will load first. So you have to toggle back between my sites is the personal sites that you have added. See, there they are. Or your group sites that load on default. So select a group site, and then data entry is going to be exactly the same. You can view the species profiles, you can print the data sheets, print the whole packet, as well as entering observation data. It looks exactly the same, you're just at a different site. So all your group site data is attributed into the group site and can be downloaded as such, as well as being in your own personal account. So another cool feature is for our plant species, we have the option of, you have the option of if a plant dies, you go add or edit plants. You can come over here and you see some options down here. If it's died, you can mark it dead. The date of the death, the last date it was observed alive, the last time you saw it, and as well as you can fill out what you think caused the death or comments. And then you can mark it dead, and it will remove it from your observation deck, but will still keep the previously entered records in our system. There's also a nice feature. You can add a plant image. So for one of my mesquites, I took a picture. And this picture will show up in your observation deck, so you can better identify which exact species you're talking about. So choose your file and then upload it. When you go back to your observation deck, you see it here. See how I changed the picture for that? So you could do that for any of your plant species. It's currently not available for animals. So one more thing. You may have remembered our badges. Those are still here. They're just in another tab. So you can click up there and see all of your accomplishments, as well as ones you still have yet to earn. So, and if you roll over, you can see the information on each of those. So let's go into the phenology calendars. These are new, just came out in February, so we're excited to let you guys use these. It's a great way to visualize your data, as well as give you control over how you want to see what you've entered. So right now, it doesn't have anything loaded. You go customize my calendar. And again, sometimes it takes a minute to load. So now it gives you all your options. These are all my sites, as well as all the species listed. Let's say I want to look at the difference in my mesquite trees from my backyard. So I have one on the north side and one on the south side. I'm going to select the correct site, click the species, and it's going to populate the list of the phenophases. I'm interested in, let's say, flower buds. So select that, click Add to Calendar, and then let's look at the south mesquite as well as its flower buds, Add to Calendar. And then I know I have one over at my Pima County trailhead. So let's try that one too and see how all three of those relate. You get to add 3 things at one time, and then you can select the year. So I'm going to compare 2013 to 2014 for all of my flower buds. And then create phenology calendar. And now it's communicating with the database to go fetch all that information and present it in a visual way. So depending on your internet speed, this could take a little longer than, or it could be much quicker. But just be patient. And then you'll get something like this. So you'll see the orange bars are 2013, or the first year you select, and the gray bars are the second year you select, or 2014 in my case. So you can see, if you hover over, it will give you more information, such as the first date and the last date, as well as how many yeses, how many times you saw that during that period. So you can see there was, from 2013 to 2014, look at the difference in how much earlier 2014 was in my backyard, but that 2013 and 2014 overlapped a little bit, as well as 2013 was earlier. So you can make this your default calendar if you'd like to save this upon loading your observation deck. As well as, if it's an interesting image, if you come over here to the side menu and click, you could print it, you could save it as a JPEG, a PDF, a vector document. So let's say we'll save this. You could clear it if you want to start from scratch and find other things. If you want to compare different species, different phenophases. Anyway, you can play around with this as much as you want. We want people to be able to visualize their data and see what they're really doing, what they're finding. So if you go back to your observation deck, and there it is, it loads. It loads in a little different scale because, again, this is a smaller window, but you can always download it or print it if you want a bigger picture. So you're welcome to play with that as much as you'd like, as many different of the phenophases or different species. If you want to compare different sites, we really want this tool. We'd like feedback on it if you guys are interested, if it's something you like. We're really excited to have it out for you guys for spring, so you can compare maybe last year to this year or past years, as well as motivate you guys to contribute and get out there and see yes, no, when it's happening compared to last year or years before. So one last thing. We do have mobile apps. We've got links for you to download the Android or iPhone mobile applications. They are both free, and once you have your sites and species set up with your desktop account, it is best to do initial profile setup using a desktop, but then it is pretty seamless to move over to the mobile applications for observing. This eliminates the paper data sheets because you can submit directly from the field. And I think that's all I've got. So if you guys have been submitting questions, we're going to get to those now. Thanks for your participation. All right.
Thanks, Sarah. So really quickly, before we move on to just a couple of questions that we had, did you get the data sheet downloaded Can we look at that really fast just to see it in download? Okay. So let's see. Failed to load PDF.
Well, it's because this computer doesn't have the PDF reader, so.
Oh, I see. So the one thing that I just wanted to mention is the data sheet example that I showed you looks kind of like what the data sheet would look like.
I'll pull one up in just a second.
Sarah will pull one up for us while I answer the other questions. So the first question that we had was, how important is it that our plant and animal observations coincide? And the answer to that is it's not important at all. If you just wanted to observe the plants or if you just wanted to observe the animals, either of those is fine. But if you wanted to observe two things together in nature, we have the ability to do that. So I think maybe that was from the slide that I showed where I was demonstrating all the overlap of everything that happens in the habitat. But either one is fine and all data are valuable. Okay, Sarah has the data sheet up there. So that's what it would look like if you printed out a data sheet for one species, one individual, for, I guess we have about a week's worth of data that you could include on there. And then also the phenophase definitions can be printed out with them as well. So that's what she's scrolling down there, so that you can take both of those things out into the field. The next question that we had was about the mobile devices, and Sarah just showed you the link on the observation deck there that says for Android and iPhone. We have them for both of those operating systems or types of phones. So you do need to go down into the Google Play Store or the iTunes Store and download them first. And as she mentioned, we really recommend that you set up your account online first. In fact, I just had a workshop last week where people downloaded the app while we were talking, and it's really difficult to get everything set on the phone because the phone screen is so small. So if you have everything organized like Sarah showed you today on the online computer account first, when you download the app and you log in, everything will be on there for you already. And then I also recommend making changes on the computer if you are adding or subtracting any plants or animals. It just makes it a lot easier to deal with there. Let's see. Another question. Somebody else asked, can we add a different time for each species? And I think that's a really great question as well. I would say if you're talking about adding an observation for a plant and an animal, if it's not happening exactly at the same time, then you should make a second entry. Sarah?
We don't allow multiple entries per day. So unless you see them on the same day at the same time, the system will not allow two entries from the 16th, say.
So, okay, so you can't do two on the same day, even if you have a different time?
Correct.
Okay. You could do two on the same day, but not at the same time. Alyssa is chatting with me.
Okay.
With different times. Sorry. So we totally confused that whole thing. So what she's saying is, Sarah, can you go back to the enter observation page? Let's show you.
So here,
as it loads.
I'm going to pick my backyard site because I have plants and animals there. And let's say yesterday I went out and I did observe leaves and flowers on one of my mesquite trees. Enter the time. I went out in the morning, so 9 a.m. Oh, so you have to enter the time first and then enter your observations or it will erase them. So I saw leaves and the flower buds. And then later that day, when I came home in the afternoon, I saw a couple of house wrens. So see again, the times are different. This says 9 and this says 3. That's it. And then scroll down to submit observations. submitted both of them. But you have to select the date and then the time before you enter the observation.
So yeah. So then I think we can definitively say the answer to that question is, especially if you're thinking about observing plants and animals at the same time, if you see an animal later, you can make a second entry, and it's recommended to make a second entry on the same day as long as you enter a different time for it. But if you are out there observing for an hour and you're looking at your plants and you are incidentally looking for the animals that are on your list, you can also enter the time at the top there and say that you are incidentally seeing a bird during that hour period of time so that you don't necessarily have to go back and make a second entry. If that's confusing, certainly be in touch with us and we can help you think through that a little bit more in detail. Let's see. Someone had a question about deciduous trees. Are the seeds considered the fruit? And the answer to that question is, in general, yes. What I'm going to suggest is that we also have a couple of resources that are going to be coming out this spring. So we have a botany primer that's going to be released in just a couple weeks, and that will answer some of the questions like that in relationship to making observations in Nature's Notebook. And it's also great to point out that you should be pretty clear about what you're observing. So being able to identify your species and being able to identify the individual phenophases is kind of a critical thing before you get started, because we want to make sure that you are entering accurate observations. If you're not sure what you're looking at, you can always use that question mark that we showed you. And then as you get more comfortable looking at your individual in nature, you'll be able to better know whether or not you're definitively seeing a phenophase. And that's the best way to go about it. So you don't need to answer all of those questions on the data sheet at first when you're getting started, especially if you're not really comfortable with what you're looking at. We have a somewhat related question in here that says, if we have a species in our yard, but we're not exactly sure what it is, what type of serviceberry, either a downy serviceberry or an Allegheny serviceberry, can we take data on it and fill in specific species once we've fully identified it? Sometimes the differences between trees can't be seen until they leaf out, or can we change it from one to the other after some data has been entered? So there's two parts to that question. I would say before you know what it is, you could certainly use the protocols on paper and make your observations there. And then if you're able to identify it as the tree leaves out a little bit more and you get more information about what you have in your yard, then you can go ahead and enter it online. So my recommendation would be to just observe it on paper until you're sure exactly what it is before entering it into Nature's Notebook. And that's definitely a valid thing. Sometimes it's really hard to tell the differences between trees. And oftentimes we also don't really have a way to distinguish between varieties in our database, so you could just put that kind of thing in the comments. We do have a way to edit the data, and I don't know, Sarah, if you want to show that really quickly. We have a couple minutes. She can go back to the observation deck and the data entry page. There's a way to make an edit to an observation that you've entered. So if you realize that you entered something incorrectly, you can go back and correct it. So she's going to scroll down. You can see, there you go. There's a delete button that you could delete your entire entry if you wanted to. And it'll ask you if you're sure.
And see there, it took it off of the date of 3/12. So, but it left the other observations from the 12th if you were just felt one of your set of observations was wrong. So then again, everything else is there, and it says observation successfully deleted.
Great.
There's also, if you have entered observation data on a species and it turns out you misidentified it, please just contact us when you go in here to edit plants, and you're going to go for delete misidentified species, and you want to delete it. It will tell you to contact us because we then need to handle those records in our database because they are technically incorrect now. So it'll have you email us and just provide us the information of the plant, the site name, the species name, and your reason for deletion.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Let's see. We have a couple other questions in here. We have a question about a bird. If it's seen that can't be identified, can a placeholder be created? I would say the same thing. I wouldn't enter it into Nature's Notebook until you're absolutely sure what you're looking at, just because we don't want the data to be incorrect.
Or you could always use, on the Enter Observation Data, use the comment field below the species you saw, such as entering it here. You don't have to say what species it is. Say you saw some type of swallow. And that then is documented in our system.
Great. We have a question that says, when reporting on open flowers phenophase for asters, do you report yes when the ray flowers unfold, or are you looking for the point when the disc flowers begin to open? That's a detailed question that we can answer during our upcoming webinar that's called Botany Primer and Phenophase, Tricky Phenophases. So I'm going to maybe answer that question offline, but I just wanted to let everyone know that we are going to have some more detailed information coming out about that. The way that our phenophase definitions are drafted are very literal, so if you read that definition and you have some questions about whether or not this is what you're actually seeing, then you can certainly be in touch with us about that. I think we might have covered all of the questions that I see in here. So if there aren't any other ones that are coming in, I do again want to mention that our next webinar on April 21st is going to be the Botany and Tricky Phenophase webinar. We did one of those last year, but we're going to do another one this year, so that could help answer some of those questions that you might have regarding our phenophase definitions and also some of the botany questions that you might have for participating in Nature's Notebook. We do have the Botany Primer coming out in a couple weeks, and for next spring we're going to be working on a phenophase primer that will answer some of those questions as well. If you're participating with a group in your region, you might check with folks to see if they have any resources available for you to learn the species that are near you a little bit better. We don't have pictures for every single phenophase of every species in our database, but some of the groups that we work with are creating resources like that for folks. So that's something else to be in touch with. And Sarah just put up on the screen there our contact information. If you have any general questions, you can contact our support at USANPN email, or my email address is up there, and Sarah's email address is up there as well as our phone number, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have at any time. So with that,
thanks for your participation in Nature's Notebook, you guys.
Yeah.
And we look forward to what you see in spring and later in the year.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks everyone.